Well, hello, everybody.
I kind of hope someone's watching this for the first time on a video on YouTube, and it comes up with some good politics that they just say to themselves, well, that sounds like a great idea. Why don't we have our politics? What do you do around here? Sorry to interrupt your good morning, Daniel.
No, I was just saying good morning, and a common good morning at that.
Top of the hat, common good morning to you. September 3rd, Tuesday after Labor Day, the race to the White House has begun. I heard it referred to today as a snap election. I don't think that's what that term is, but they're calling it America's first snap election. When the person who's been the vice president for 3+ years, was the president before and has been running since he was first elected president, are in the race, it's pretty much snappy, like a snap election. But hey, in Minnesota, it's perfect weather. This is the kind of day, the skies are big and blue. My wife said yesterday, this reminds me of the day of September 11th when that happened. Because, you know, we all have that like memory of what your sky looks like. And I was like, totally. Early September in Minnesota.
That went really dark.
Guys.
Oh, it's a beautiful day. You know what this reminds me of? The worst day.
The worst day.
Because second worst day. Second worst day. The worst day in American history is the day that we pulled out of Afghanistan.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Clearly. Yeah. Not the day that Donald Trump asked the Taliban to come to Camp David on September 11th to negotiate.
That's a thing that happened that we don't pay enough attention to. Yeah, people just breeze over that.
Just skip it like a rope in the summertime. Yeah, just gone. Well, okay, that's how things are here in Minneapolis. Big blue skies, early September, just hearkening you back to, you know, football and start of school and, you know, other things. Yeah. How are things in Michigan, Dan? I bet big and blue.
Big and blue. The heat has finally broken. It was nice and cool last night. We were traveling. We were down in Nashville, and it was so hot down there. And got back to the nice, cool northern weather.
You sign a recording deal while you were there?
Big time deal. No, just visiting family.
Do you guys know who that singer is? Somewhere out of Appalachia, a guy with a big beard. He played a song on a resonator. Took off. What's that guy's name?
I don't remember his name, but
the song was.
It went viral, and the first clip Richmond, that I heard, Richmond, north of Richmond.
That guy,
I heard the first verse and the chorus, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is a great song." Yeah, and then you listen to verse 2, and you're like, "Oh no."
Okay, and then 3, you're like, "I'm not sure." So anyway, I follow this guy, and he's you know, people have always been saying he was a plant, he's big funded. I think he's not. I think he's telling the truth. But he put out a video the other day. And he said, hey, I just want to explain what's happening here. So I basically got an offer for a recording contract, which he said he wouldn't do so he could stay pure. I got a recording contract that I just can't turn down. So he swings his little chair around and the camera swings around and his dog with sunglasses and a hat on is sitting with his paw on a piece of paper and he signs a contract for his dog's record label. It was a great bit. You could come up with one of those out of Nashville. Like I finally buckled. I've signed a deal I couldn't break. Rob, how are things there in Arkansas?
It also the heat has finally broken, and it is gorgeous weather. It's a little cloudier than it was on September 11th, 2001.
Oh, is it a big clear blue sky?
It's not currently a clear blue sky. It was on September 11th, 2001. That's why I said it's a little bit cloudier than it was that day.
No, I'm saying that day in Arkansas, was it also?
I don't know. I didn't live in Arkansas on that day. I lived in Michigan.
I see.
Anyway,
I was
really missing the point, Doug.
You may be missing the point. Big and blue sky, big blue sky in Michigan that day. I bet it was.
Probably was. Yeah, hey, but it's good. It's good.
Rob, quick question. Open the weather app, whichever one you use of your choice, which I'd also love to know, because I'm always looking for a better weather app. I don't know about you all, but they're just all terrible. What's it looking like on Saturday when the Faith, Hope, and Love Supporting Democracy for All tour comes rolling into Cabot, Arkansas? That's right, friends. You heard it here. Well, maybe not first, but you heard it here. We're coming to Cabot, Arkansas. How's it looking in Cabot on September 7th?
It's going to be sunny, low 80s. It's going to be beautiful.
Wow. Cannot wait. So if you're anywhere in the area, consider moving. But before then, join us in Cabot, Arkansas for a fantastic event just north of Little Rock.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know where that is in relation to the two other places I know in Arkansas. So.
Which are Fayetteville and Little Rock?
Yep.
Oh. Yeah. I thought you were going to say Little Rock, and I can't remember the other one. But I think my friend lives over there.
I think my friend lives
what was that place?
Robb is
it's just outside. Squirreled away just outside.
Outside of Arkansas. All right. Lots happening. I just received a important email today that I sent you guys the screenshot of from KamalaHarris.com. In the little pre-screening header, it says, "We are building the biggest, most powerful grassroots movement this country has ever," and I'm guessing it's going to say seen. Do you have it there, Dan? Can you put it up there? Okay. "We're building the biggest, most powerful grassroots movement this country has ever seen." And the subject line, $3. Sometimes the subject line and the first few sentences of the preview click and go together, and you really feel like, there we go. And sometimes it's, "Hey, pal, $3 away from the biggest grassroots movement the country has ever seen. Could you just be in for $3?
Yeah, that's an interesting play.
We went from chip in 15. Now we're just down to 3.
Could you do 3? Do you have any change in the couch that you could convert into digital currency?
Could you? I mean, you throw more of that in change at the McDonald's drive-thru when they have the little change grabber right there for the Ronald McDonald House, and you feel a little awkward about, like, wow, a family's going to support a child who's going through surgery at a hospital, and I'm going to chip in 17 cents. That's pretty much what this feels like. The largest grassroots movement the country has ever seen. Could you chip in 3? Now, I guess if 300 million people gave $3, we'd be in great shape. But they're relentless in just give us less than the imaginable amount. But having said that, did you see the totals for Kamala Harris fundraising?
No.
Big money.
Yeah, over $500 billion, trillion dollars, gazillion dollars. What's the largest number a kid can say?
Gazillion
dollars. And they're spending it. They're already spending. They've spent like $45 million in the last couple of weeks.
I was going to say, you got to get started spending that, because it's going to be hard to spend that much money in 2 months.
Yeah. And the great news. Go ahead, Rob.
I saw a comparison of spending by state, comparing the Harris campaign to the Trump campaign. It's based on spending of digital ad, or not digital, but TV ads, TV ad buys that have been reserved. And the Harris campaign significantly outspending the Trump's campaign in every state, I think with the exception of Pennsylvania, where it was very close. But just, I mean, spending $50 million where Trump is spending $2 million, so all, significant.
10 to 1.
I mean, it's more than TV ads, though.
Yeah, and what you're going to start hearing now for people critiquing the viability of Madam President Harris's success is, after all that money they've spent, the numbers still haven't moved. Like, she didn't get a bounce apparently off the convention from what they've seen in polling just recently. And now you're going to start to hear those critiques. But here's the thing. They're, as you just pointed out, Rob, they're not only spending it on television ads, they are hiring thousands of people to work the campaign. The thing that the Biden team did it's now coming out what they've done exceptionally well. Not their messaging was not on point. Their candidate was the wrong candidate for the moment. But what the Biden campaign did do from last summer until July was build a massively sophisticated and effective campaign apparatus in every one of the key swing states. And now they have the money to put that into play. And they are hiring, they have tens of thousands of volunteers, and they have thousands of paid employees who can help canvass, can help organize, can help get signs out, can help phone calling happen, like the kinds of things for a turnout model that you have to have. They're prepared for it. And apparently the Trump team has done almost none of it. Mm. Lara Trump, Donald Trump's son's wife.
Yeah. It's got a new music video out, by the way.
She's too busy putting out music videos.
She out like,
wow.
Bad because they wouldn't play it. Does she have another one after?
Yeah, there's a new one out.
I just saw it today, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think it dropped yesterday.
How do you see these things? Where did you see it?
The internet.
The Twitter.
Is it a music video?
Yeah.
Or is it just,
No, yeah. I didn't watch the whole thing. I couldn't.
I did. I watched every moment of it. We ought to play it. Dan, I'm gonna talk about Lara Trump, and then we're gonna play this video. I'm gonna send you, Dan. I'm gonna send it to you, Dan.
But that's the thing. These are not serious people, and yet they are in the highest positions of power within the Republican Party.
Perfect. The person who's in charge of the RNC. Now, to be clear, the Republican National Committee and the Democratic National Committee, the DNC and the RNC, their primary job is to produce a convention and to produce a platform on which the presidential candidate and other candidates can refer. Primarily, that's what the RNC or the DNC is meant to do. Put together a structure and an organization, and then they hand it off to whomever is selected as the candidate, whether that selection was solidified in a previous election or in January in a primary or on July 28th or whenever it was that Kamala Harris was officially selected. That's their job. So to give Lara might be saying to herself, hey, my work here is done. I've pulled off the convention. But they, as you say, they're not serious people. And they're in it for themselves. Donald Trump is selling trading cards that are just a screenshot. And Lara Trump is making music videos. And if you're sending money or your family members are sending money to Donald Trump, this is what they're spending their money on.
Yeah.
Is this. What is Kamala Harris spending her money on? Field workers, turnout models, polling, conversations. Can hear my Republican friend Casey saying it already if you were even listening to this. And paying people to vote, paying immigrants, he will say, to go and vote as if that's possible or even how it works. They're absolutely convinced that that's what they're raising money, he's told me, so that you can pay immigrants to go and vote for your candidate, which is just hilarious. But that's not what they're doing. They're doing it for turnout models and for all the work. So that is extremely good news. And yet the polls continue to stay.
Well, yeah, here's the thing we've talked a lot about polls is a lot of these recent polls are still within the margin of error, and but Harris has a narrow lead, especially in the Rust Belt. And this article from Politico points out that Hillary Clinton led Trump in these three swing states in 2016, according to the polls, and still lost them.
Yes.
And so I feel like since 2016, my faith, maybe your faith as well, dear listener, your faith in the polls has been shaken. And, it's the only hard metric that we have to go on. And so we still talk about them. And, ups and downs can show, some dips or gains in enthusiasm. But We're still sort of just reading the tea leaves here.
Well, and this is the question that we all face when we look at a poll. Is a poll being taken for our purpose as a voter and as a consumer of political news to tell us what's going to happen? I have treated polls that way. I clearly treated polls that way in 2016, only to have my heart broken. But polling is not designed to tell viewers of political news what's going to happen. Right? It's almost like people who are futurists, where their job is actually to be a futurist. The one thing a futurist who's trained in this and does this work for companies or for governments will tell you is, we do not predict the future, right? Which sounds like exactly what they would do as a futurist. They say, we want to tell you what the conditions of the future are going to look like and what options you have available to you. What polling is doing is telling campaigns what is the circumstance and situation that this campaign finds itself in. So if it can be utilized by a smart campaign to know how to change their tactic or stay the course, it can be very effective. But when it is produced or put out in the world as if it's designed to tell us, like a weather forecast, the probability of rain, that is not what polling is meant to do. So we all have this fundamental struggle because polling is the only thing, as you say, Dan, that we can get our grips on to tell us what's the future going to look like. But that's not what polling is designed to do. So the pollsters get very snippy about this, right? They say stuff like, hey, the polls do work, but not to predict future voter behavior. Right. Which to all the rest of us, we're like, that's the only purpose of telling me 52% someplace or 48% of this or that.
Well, Doug, this is, as you elucidated us, with this information a while back, that when you're watching a weather report and it says there's a 40% chance of rain, it means that there's a 100% chance of rain in 40% of the viewing area. So people don't understand the weather report either, so
that's
like
right.
That, listen,
future
polls are
very hard.
Oh, for sure. Polls are snapshots of a particular group of people at a particular moment that have been photoshopped by whoever is taking that snapshot. Because polls very rarely are just the bare numbers are very rarely given to us. They are often massaged and based on models and representation. And listen, all of these things are just like they are a Photoshop snapshot of a group of people at a particular time.
That's right.
So like, if you know that's what they are, then like, okay.
Yep.
Like, we have a ton of work to do between now and November.
Yeah, the thing we do know works in predicting the future is past experience. That's the one thing, sort of across the board, unless you're investing in the gambling scenario that is called the stock market, where those people are fiscally required to remind you past performance does not predict future behavior in the stock market. But for the most part, the one thing we know is what happened before is more likely to happen again. So that's where we can say, do we know if Montana is going to vote for the Republican for president or for the Democrat for president? You don't have to poll them. You can look and say, well, in the past, they've done it every single time. They're likely to do that again. Is there anything to tell us that would change? Yes or no? So polling can sort of help you with that. But then you get these particular states or particular districts where there's been a lot of fluidity the people who live there aren't the same as in the last election, or they've done different things at different times. That's what we mean by sort of a swing state. So this is what we all sort of intuitively, I guess, know about what polling is. But when the polling is saying to a campaign, you're doing poorly with this particular group of people, that can really move a campaign. What the Clinton campaign did poorly with their information, and this is all laid out in many books, including one called Shattered. If you really want to go on a dark read the book Shattered, which is about Hillary Clinton's campaign and what happened and how it fell apart. That Robbie Mook made decisions based on polling that he was seeing and said, I don't believe the polling. The internals of the polling. He said, there's just no way that can be true. We know better what's happening. So pollsters get really angry, internally when they hear people say things like the polls were totally wrong in 2016. They're like, not the polls we gave the campaign. They were spot on, and they didn't listen to them and they didn't follow them. So we should just all know what we're looking at when we see any polling is the change from past behavior. And is there anything to tell us that? We happen to believe around here at Vote Common Good that evangelicals are actually one of the groups who are changing. Trump is now in trouble with the more right-wing conservative anti-abortion movement inside the Republican Party. And that could cost him 1 or 2% of evangelical voters too. And I'm sure we should talk about that today, about what's happening there, where Trump is now saying things that are so perfectly Donald Trump, but now he's saying them about abortion and IVF, things that the people in that camp do not want to hear from any Republican nominee, especially one who they're not really sure if he's a conservative or not, as Mike Pence is so proud to remind us that he's just not conservative enough.
Yeah, and it's so funny to see that happening in real time, where Donald Trump actually just says what he thinks and forgets that it's the wrong side of these issues for his base voters. So it's
totally.
Yeah.
When he said the other day that he wants insurance companies to be forced or the federal government to fund IVF. Now that makes perfect sense to many of us, but if you're on the life begins at conception belief system, if you're on that side of the equation, they oppose IVF because they believe that the moment a sperm makes contact with an egg, at that moment, even before chromosomes may have exchanged, at the moment of conception or the moment of inception, the moment of contact, that is human life. And that human life is as valuable as human life as you and I or any point of gestation. IVF has to freeze those eggs in that state and then implant them into the mother. And the eggs that are not used often do not survive or are discarded. This is why, if you hear people say on the pro-life, anti-abortion side that they oppose IVF, or if you hear them say they oppose certain kinds of contraception, where the hours after that egg makes contact with a sperm, that moment, the contraception could still do its thing and restrict that egg from implanting in the uterus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That for them is an abortion. For Donald Trump to say to those people, the federal government should fund IVF, which creates tens of thousands of these fertilized eggs, to them is a complete anathema.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do most people outside, does Donald Trump know how a baby is made? Pretty sure not. Does he know why the IVF people are concerned about fertilized eggs in cold storage? Why that's a problem? No. But you know who does know that? the hardcore right who opposes abortion at every level, including IVF. They know it. And when he says this kind of stuff, these are people who are like, look, we cannot abide with this man any longer. Now, is that going to be 30% of them, 40%, 50%? No. Could it be 1 or 2 or 3%? And could that produce 0.5%? Could that produce 3,000 people in Wisconsin who just say, I'm done with the guy on the hard pro-life side? Well, I hope so, because you know how many people Joe Biden won Wisconsin by? Like 20,000. 1/7 of those people may have just said, I'm not going to vote for a guy who thinks the federal government should fund abortion by funding IVF. If you see someone screaming at you through a bullhorn or outside of a pregnancy center, I promise you, this is what they think. And when you ask them, they will tell you. And please ask them, because they should get this word out. If Santorum, remember that guy? He used to be a senator from Pennsylvania, and he was not Rick Santorum.
Yeah.
Hardcore arguing the Catholic pitch, was totally opposed to IVF. It's why the Catholic Church is opposed to IVF. Oh, so anyway.
And for so many people, this is a self-described one-issue voter thing. They claim that this is the thing holding them back from not voting for Trump in the first place. This is why they voted in 2016. This is why they were happy about the Supreme Court picks, because this was the end-all, be-all, was to overturn Roe and make abortion illegal across the board.
Yep. And if you care about, okay, I do not agree with their perspective. I do not think we should attribute human life to the exchange of chromosomes in a pre-uterus implanted cellular interaction. So you can have a whole conversation about that, or just watch a bunch of YouTube videos if that all seems a little heady for you about how babies are made at the chromosomal level.
Let's not be Googling how babies are made.
Miracle of life.
Yes, that not starry-eyed. Look over dinner. But honestly, when they show the little representation of the millions of sperm all racing, up the tube, it's really quite dramatic. And I'll tell you, the pro-life people who put these videos out, top dollar, some of them are spending on the animation. I mean, it is really, really quite something. Truly, if you haven't looked at this stuff in modern day and you only look at like the old-timey things you may have seen in
I was going to say, back in the 90s in health class, it was pretty low budget. So
slideshow. Yeah.
They've come a long way.
Yeah. I won one race in my whole life, that sperm race. But if you're into these people, this is what has animated the 10% of the hard right to bully the rest of the Republican Party for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And if you make those people not trust you, that is a real problem. But I don't think Donald Trump is going to lose evangelicals, primarily because he also said this week that Florida's bill to restrict abortions after 6 weeks, which is being challenged by a constitutional amendment, that he has said out loud multiple times this week, 6 weeks is not long enough.
Mm-hmm.
Saying women need to have more than 6 weeks to decide if they're going to terminate a pregnancy. The hard right is out of their mind. And now they've just said, look, Donald Trump is not our messenger on this. Donald Trump is the power that we're going to use to make our message law. But even Donald Trump is like, this makes no sense. And this is a guy who, when he talks about it, he doesn't make any sense. Like it's on every side of it. So, but he's not going to lose this election because he loses the evangelicals because of the 6 week. He wants more than 6 weeks. And because of IVF, he's going to lose it because the moderate evangelicals want to listen to Mike Pence. I've become more convinced of this over the last few days, you guys, that look, if we can message to the right audience, be like Mike on this one. You went to Donald Trump because Mike Pence told you in 2016 he's a good man and I trust him. Now he says He is not a good man. I do not
trust him.
I worked with him, and he does not have my endorsement. And then he goes on, doubles down, and says, and that should be no surprise to you. That Mike Pence, that's the one you want in the hearts and minds of evangelical voters who said, I thought he was like us, and I thought he liked us, but it turns out I'm sticking with Mike Pence. Or if you're Catholic, I don't know, stick with Paul Ryan. Or if you're kind of more moderate evangelical, stick with Betsy DeVos. Like, all of these people have said, Donald Trump does not have my support any longer. Mm-hmm. I think it's really a thing that is in the, again, for a lot of people who don't pay attention to the subculture of evangelicalism, Trump has almost none of those validators left anymore. They're all gone. And what he has is the J.D. Vance version of that, not the Mike Pence version, not the kind me and Mother have decided that he's the kind of person that we want to have lead our country as faithful evangelicals. No, he's got the new convert to Catholicism in J.D. Vance, who comes from the Knights of Columbus and Stop the Pope Steve Bannon crowd that wants to burn down papal authority in the world currently. That's J.D. Vance. It's just unbelievably wild.
But what's even wilder is it doesn't matter to a lot of people that the person that they put their trust in and said, this is our guy, whether it was Pence or whether it was, General Mattis in the Marine general, famous general who was in the cabinet and came out and said, no, he's a disaster, shouldn't be trusted with this office. It doesn't matter who comes out and says this. People will still say, no, they're now part of the problem. They're part of the deep state.
Yeah.
They've been tainted.
Yeah. But I this goes back to a point that I've made previously. I think there's so often when we are looking for, okay, this is the thing that's going to, rupture Donald Trump's support amongst these folks. And we keep looking for that seismic shift. It's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. What we need is shave off a percentage point here. Shave off 2 percentage points there. The small inflection points, the acupunctural interventions that can, those cumulatively will make a difference. Now, does Mike Pence not supporting Donald Trump, does that make a difference nationwide? No. It might make a difference to 500 people in Wisconsin. It might, have it, or probably more likely 500 people in Michigan who, used to live in Indiana and now, move north of the border. It's those types of things. And, same type of thing with this Arlington Seminary debacle.
Cemetery.
What did I say? Seminary? Little Freudian slip there.
I'll use those two things.
Yeah. It's same thing with the Arlington Cemetery debacle that has happened now, where is it going to shift majorities of veterans? Probably not. But will it shift 3%? Probably.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And does that make a difference in a state like Pennsylvania? Oh yeah, it does. Does that make a difference in a state like Georgia? Yep. So I think, Trump is going to lose by it's death by a million paper cuts.
Yep.
It reminds me a little bit of, have you been to an arcade where there's this machine where you put your coin in and you hope your coin knocks all the pile of coins into your lap?
Yes.
It reminds me of that.
Addictive.
There's just so many little things that keep adding up, and eventually it's pushing enough voters away from Trump to make a difference. It might not knock the whole pile in for a jackpot, but it's going to shift the balance enough to really make a difference.
Yeah, look, if Donald Trump hadn't won Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin by 10 or 15,000, 20,000 votes in 2016, and if Joe Biden hadn't won those states by similar numbers and then won Georgia by 11,000 votes and Arizona by 20,000 votes, all this would seem ridiculous, right? It makes no sense to be out there trying to move hundreds or thousands of people when 150 million people voted in the last election, maybe 160 million people. Like, it would be ludicrous to think so. But in the Electoral College, in states where it's going to come down to certain counties, this is exactly how it's going to happen. And Rob, I think you are exactly right, because not only is it going to keep that person from voting, it's going to keep them from saying something when they go into the diner. It's going to keep them from putting that red hat on when they go shopping or putting a Trump sign out in their yard. And all of those things start to repress the narrative that exists for so many, especially religious voters, on how do you do the right thing. Yes, one of the things Trump picked up on in 2016 and didn't pick up the benefit of in 2020 and won't in 2024 was a huge upswing of so many evangelicals crowding to him. The reason the numbers went from, 78, 79% to 81% in 2016 at the last minute, the last week of the campaign was a number of things that happened, including Hillary Clinton having the investigation being reopened by Comey and the FBI. That was a big deal. A lot of people we've talked to have mentioned that. People thinking she's going to win anyway, so it doesn't matter. But also a surge of people toward Trump from their own communities. And it felt like this is just what we're all doing now. We're all going to give it a try, like we're holding arms together. That is what fractured somewhat in 2020, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that fractures in 2024, because I think it's entirely possible that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz could receive more evangelical support than any Democratic candidate since Jimmy Carter.
Yep.
This is, and what's that going to mean? 30%. If they were to get 28, 29, 30% of evangelicals, they're not going to get 80%. They're not going to get 50-50 like Carter did, or some people even argue 60% support from evangelicals for Jimmy Carter. They're not going to get 50 or 60%. But could they get 28, 29, or in some states, 30%? Because the overall number of votes for Donald Trump goes down because people will say no and other people swing over. That's the difference maker. So friends who are listening to this or sending it around, look, just keep up the conversations. Just keep talking, because the moment for someone to make a decision of who they're voting for is the moment their pencil or their apparatus touches that ballot, right?
Stylus. The stylus touches the screen.
The stylus touches the screen. Do you still punch holes? I can't remember. Do I punch a hole in a thing?
You got a hanging Chad?
Yeah, I can't remember if I have to punch a hole out. I don't quite remember how the voting happens. But whatever it is that's going to touch a screen or to fill in a circle. I mean, in my place, I know what I have to do. I have to fill in a circle. Yeah. And I'm always so careful about like getting right inside the lines and make sure it's all of it and not rubbing just like the level of which on that presidential one. Then I get to the judges on the back where they're not running against anybody, and I just put check marks and do silly stuff, which I probably shouldn't do. It probably invalidates my entire
smiley faces inside the
little sad faces.
Throw out the whole ballot.
Draw this little guy, that little the hands up. But people aren't done. People aren't done, and they're not decided yet. And this is what the Harris campaign is going to want us to all believe is, until they vote early or until November 5th, the decision hasn't been made. And if you start telling yourself it's all settled, it's all done, it's all determined by people's mindsets already, it's not. And again, it's not going to be everybody.
Yep.
But I'll tell you this, if Donald Trump gets down into the low 70% of white evangelical voters in 2024, that begins to break the back of the MAGA movement overall. It doesn't just lose him the election, which it will for sure. It weakens his moral authority and his electoral authority to tell the Republican Party that they have to stay MAGA. It would, if he loses that crowd, this is why if he loses 1% of the hard right anti-abortion people and he loses 5 or 7 or 12% of the moderate evangelicals, and all that comes together for that to be. This not only does in his election, but it does in the validity that the MAGA movement is what the Republicans have to stay committed to. And what we've seen from Republicans is all they care about is believing they can win.
Yeah.
They don't really win all that much, but they thought they were going to win the Senate, and they thought they were going to take over the House, and they thought they were going to win the White House. And when that collapses under Donald Trump's behavior and voter reaction to him, I think it could really be the end of the MAGA movement, the beginning of the end of the MAGA movement. That might take another 7 or 8 or 10 years for it to totally work through the system. But that's a bigger goal than just making sure Donald Trump never holds the power of the presidency again.
Yeah. I sure hope that's true.
All right, can we talk a little bit about Florida? I see it in the chats. Of course, we have Alex.
And Jim just mentioned that he hopes Florida goes blue.
Yeah.
So that Trump will lose his new home state.
We know you're the greatest booster of the Common Good podcast, and we appreciate that. And we know it's your hometown or your home state. There's not a chance Florida's going blue, is there? I cannot imagine Florida goes blue. Jim hopes so. Alex kind of wonders. Do you guys think there's any chance Florida?
It's too early for me to make one of my bold predictions. I like making the bold predictions. One of these times it's gonna turn out.
It's got to. Just the sheer chance.
Yeah, total gambler's fallacy. I am beginning to think that we might have a map shifting election in 2024, and I'm not ready to say this. I'm not ready to make this prediction, but if we do have a map shifting election here in 2024, Florida will be one of the states that shifts.
I feel like Fred Sanford from the 1970s great comedy, Sanford and Son over here. Coming to join you, honey. Yeah, look, if Florida's in play, even in play,
it's done.
There's not a scenario by which Kamala Harris wins Florida, but loses Pennsylvania. Right? In my mind, I can't imagine that the conditions have shifted nationally enough. And part of the reason I bring this up isn't just because Alex is there and Jim brought it up in the chat. It's because Kamala Harris is in Florida this week. What is she doing in Florida?
It almost makes me a little nervous, like a replay of 2016 when Hillary was in Texas. She was not spending time in Michigan and Pennsylvania. She was, in Texas.
She was in Texas.
Kamala should be buying lakefront property on Lake Michigan and Lake Erie and Lake Superior. So she could say, like that is, I don't know. To your point, Dan, is exactly what I thought this morning. My stomach's just started to sink and I started to think, oh my goodness. Now, is she in Palm Beach, Florida this week doing an event around reproductive rights because she knows there's a lot of people there who care about that issue and can be part of the campaign in pretty significant ways? Funders, volunteers, and the rest. Okay, great. In other words, if it's a fundraising trip, more power to you. We need all the money to pay organizers in Arizona and Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. If it's because you think you're going to maybe pull off Florida, put that scene from Dumb and Dumber on your bus video, put it on repeat. So you're telling me there's a chance.
There's a chance.
Because at the end of that movie, they're not together. I just think, oh my goodness.
And look, we get it. We're putting on a bus tour and we're stopping in states that we didn't plan on. But
hey, don't throw stones. Don't throw bus.
We start out, we're saying we're gonna just focus on these swing states because we have limited time and days, and But then things come up, and you gotta support the good people that are doing good things. So,
big event in Arkansas on Saturday, Cabot, Arkansas.
Okay, but let's talk about why we're in Cabot, Arkansas, because Cabot, Arkansas is a town outside of Little Rock, and they have an event going on. The event is not sponsored by Democrats. This event that queued us up to this is sponsored by Republicans, because Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to be in Arkansas. We're going to be in Arkansas, and then we're going to go to Rome, Georgia, where Marjorie Taylor Greene is running. So we're going to have a weekend with Marjorie. And because we have a bus, we have to drive those places. Vice President Harris can fly, but we have to drive there. So that's going to put us in Tupelo, Mississippi. Because in Rome, Georgia is one of the places where if you wanted to weaken support for Donald Trump by weakening support for Marjorie Taylor Greene and moving some of those voters over to the Democratic candidate in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, this is why it can make sense. And then we're going to go off to California, because the same thing is happening in California. There's money there. There's money in them there hills in California, but there's also congressional races. And what's right between, I don't know, say Kansas City and California? Arizona. So we're going to end up in some places while we're getting to the other places that we need to be in buses that can only travel so far, so fast, and do these events. If the Harris campaign has that kind of logic for whatever reason, they're fundraising, they're moving the campaign, they might as well pick up people, great. But if they're in Florida, like, look, if we are in Arkansas, because we've said, hey, I think Asa Hutchinson might be onto something, that's not a great idea. But truthfully, I was on Fox News on Sunday, and the host of Fox News said to me, yeah, I know that Asa Hutchinson is one of these people who, when running, said, I can no longer vote for Donald Trump. Are those the kind of voters that you're going after? Like, exactly the kind of voters. So if we could ever chummy up with old former Governor Asa Hutchinson in Arkansas, then it kind of makes sense for the people group we're going after. So I'm not critiquing the Harris campaign at all for going to Florida. I just don't think they should go to Florida because they want to win Florida.
Yeah. Okay. Totally.
Totes.
Can we play the video now? Doug, have you seen this video? Dan, you got it ready? You got it queued up?
I have it ready. I'm a little nervous we'll get another copyright strike.
We're going to get a copyright strike.
I'll just turn the volume down.
That's all right.
Well,
strike.
I mean, the first verse is mostly the duet. The woman that she's singing with, there's a duet. The song is a duet. Now, a couple of things to notice. It's a song about firemen. A lot of the pictures in the video are of policemen.
Okay.
Very specifically, it's not a generic song about first responders. It's about firemen. Photos, many of the photos, not all of them, many of the photos of police officers.
All right. Wow.
I'm not an auto-tune expert, but seems like it. I just say, wow, she's got a deep voice.
Okay, here's what we need to be clear about for copyright, if at all possible.
This is fair use. We are going to
social commentary.
Social political commentary on a news fact that happened to use this. That's why, if you don't know what a copyright strike is, it's when you use copyrighted material inside your videos, and then YouTube especially gives you only a few of those before they shut your channel down for a certain number of days. In fact, every time we run a rally with Daniel Deitrich playing Daniel Deitrich's song that Daniel Deitrich owns, they give us a copyright warning, and we're like,
"Yeah,
it's Dan's song.
It's me. I'm singing my own song."
Yeah. So here's what I want to say to YouTube. I wrote this song that Laura Trump is singing. So we'll litigate that in court. All right. By the way, they don't listen.
Oh yeah. Okay. Fireman.
So excited right now.
And as far as topics, let's go with
Laura
firefighters. No one's ever been like, F the firefighters.
Oh,
There's
for sure.
no anti-firefighter protests.
Yeah, and we're gonna just go ahead and talk over this because it's the other woman singing. Again, just really love the fact that Donald Trump is focusing on the campaign by launching a new line of NFTs, and really glad that the co-chair of the RNC is focused on the campaign by releasing a new.
Wait, there's a new batch of NFTs?
Yeah.
I thought we were talking about the old NFTs.
Last week he launched. See, police officers.
Okay, but see, and there's just they're showing police officers who have died.
Here we go.
No, this can't be denied. You gotta be special. It takes a lot to put your last and everybody first. This can't be for likes. With your heart they can make gold. Even if
What? What do those words mean?
I don't know.
Not about the words, it's like about the vibe. Been higher.
Yeah, I saw that rhyme coming.
Should we start singing along if we can?
Sorry, it's a song about firefighters.
Oh, it's a song about
Flames
fire.
are getting higher. You're climbing up the ladder. And the pictures are of police officers.
Rob, it's like the critique people have about Bruce Springsteen, where they say the guy writes songs about cars, and he says, "I write songs about the people, and I write songs about the people in the cars. It's not about the cars." This is not a song about.
That sounds like what I always say to my kids when they talk about jazz music, and I always say, "Jazz music is about the notes that aren't being played."
I bet they love that.
Oh, they hate it.
Yeah. Pure jazz is. That's the only jazz worth listening to. All the notes that are not being played. All right. So what did we lose the audio, or did you just?
I just couldn't do it anymore.
Oh, come on, bring it back up. Bring it back up.
Yeah, I want to hear it. Come on, Dan. Come on.
Gonna do a little ad-libbing at the end.
Here we go. It's going out.
Okay. Nothing good about that video as far as the music goes. It's trauma producing, watching a small child stand with flames around them and a firefighter coming up in slow motion. Hey, put a pep in the step there. Get the kid out of the fire. So it's terrible visually, but what they're trying to do is to equate the heroes of the public sector. And I couldn't be happier that they believe that public sector, public employees, police officers and firefighters are heroes. Let's extend that now, shall we? To school teachers, to administrators, to public health servants. Let's talk about public service people as heroes. Pseudo-Trump campaign, AKA Lara Trump Industries. That's a great idea. But what they're trying to do, say it with me, shall we? Steal the valor of firefighters and police officers. If you want a stolen valor narrative song, how about this one? Now, if they're just being honest about the heroic activities of firefighters and police officers, great. Does anybody think that on Labor Day weekend, the person who's in charge of the Republican National Committee is releasing a video for any purpose other than politics? Nope.
That's just
not this guy.
This guy.
This guy.
I just love it because it's like, this is clearly a person who has enough money that no one will say no to her. You know,
There it is.
you can buy your way into any studio, into, get whatever musicians and producers you want to create this thing, and then you drop in and sing on it. They fix it up as well as they can with modern technology.
Look, it should have said at the end, shot on an iPhone 15, because all of that they did right there. To your point, Dan, like they could, with all the debt that Donald Trump has accumulated and passed on to his children, their credit lines are huge. They could run up debt to produce a much better video and frankly write a much better song than that.
Yeah, and let's be clear, firefighters deserve better than that.
They deserve that.
She has done a disservice to the firefighters.
Yeah. Often volunteer firefighters. Just a quick question. I don't know Lara Trump personally. I look forward to getting to know her someday, especially as she starts to unwind from the cult that she's found herself involved in via marriage. How many times do you think she's volunteered? What do you think her volunteer record is? Just thinking broad strokes here. The majority of firefighters in the United States who put their health and time at risk are volunteers. Or if they're not volunteers, they're literally raising the money by running cookouts and standing with a
boot at the street corner. Yeah.
Street corner to try to have enough money to pay them the $14 an hour that they're paid to be a volunteer, to just cover the fuel that they have to spend to get to and from their volunteer job. Do you think these people have spent any time signing up, even on their kids' school volunteer list? Or do you think their children have gone to private schools the entire time and they haven't volunteered for a thing? And the only reason I wonder that is because when Donald Trump had the choice to pay for his son Don's Cub Scout dues of $15, he used the private charity that he operated to pay for his kids' Cub Scout dues. He was then later convicted of fraud with that very charity and cannot be on the board of a charity in the state of New York because of his fraudulent activity. Do you think these people volunteer or give to anything at all like the volunteer firefighters do? It's just stolen valor top to bottom with these people.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost as if you could hear her say, I like the firefighters that don't have to run into fires, the way her father said, I like the soldiers that don't get captured, when he was dogging John McCain, who he said is not a hero.
Yeah.
Because real heroes don't get captured.
Yep.
Oh, it's so funny.
Just can't make
There's
it
days where I think I just have it out for the Trumps, and I really don't. It's just, you know what they're like? They're like a self-cleaning oven. They just do all the work for you. You barely even have to work.
You literally just have to say the things that they do and say.
Yeah. It's
like,
just,
this is your guy, the guy that said this exact quote.
Yeah. But on the other hand, they are working hard to be sure that the people who find themselves in Americans Are Heroes feel good about voting for the Trumps. That's their brand. Now they work against their brand all of the time, but that is their brand.
Yeah. Yeah, just to bring it back full circle to 9/11 and firefighters.
Thank you.
Because it's a
beautiful sky
big
out
blue
there.
sky outside here.
Just the fact that like Jon Stewart has had to campaign for 20 years to get 9/11 firefighter survivors the benefits that they deserve in the face of Republican adversity is wild to me. This is the back the blue people And they, when it comes down to it, refuse to spend any more money on the heroes that they'll make a song about.
Right. That's a great line. They won't spend any money on the heroes that they'll make a song about.
Yeah.
That's a great place to
it's, end, right? It's performative, you know.
It's performative. And look, as someone who is a very bad musical performer, I can speak clearly to this. It's not a good musical performance. I know not good musical performances. I do them all the time.
Deep calls to deep.
Real recognizes real.
Real talk. Government. All right, Zach. Hey, next week we're going to be out driving around the country. So if we can do a Tuesday podcast, it's going to happen from there. But come see us in Cabot, Arkansas, and keep an eye on wherever you're watching this, because you'll start seeing a bunch of things. A little Laura Coates interview we're part of, if you haven't seen yet, the Fox News interview that's going to be up in these places from yesterday. Maybe a little rumor about an early morning MSNBC show could come together. So you and your good friends are.
If you like to have, night tea and morning Joe, if those are your drinks of choice, you might be interested in what we're up to.
Might be wanting to watch tomorrow. Is that good?
That's great. Thanks for everyone in the chat, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, bye.